Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. I bet this is an episode you wish you'd had a decade ago.
Oh my God. I wish I'd known Carla. I wish I'd read her book.
I wish I could have introduced you to Carla a decade ago and saved myself a hell of a lot of effort.
Seriously, I wish she would have been my coach a long time ago. Would have been saved a lot of angst. But
everyone, me and you included, a lot of angst.
Exactly. I definitely fell into some of the patterns that she describes. She did too. She knows it from both sides, from being someone who gets stuck in codependent relationships and now being someone who coaches women out of codependent relationships. So she's been through it all.
Yeah. This episode, we talk a little bit more about the sort of extremes of codependence, but she also says that literally 90% of people are somewhere on the codependent spectrum. So I think it's important to point out that this applies, and it applies not just to romantic relationships. It can show up in your friendships, at work, anywhere where you're like really worried about people liking you and wanting them to accept you and feeling like you have to go above and beyond to get that. I think that's some codependence showing up.
Yep.
So this is just going to be good for you in general to hear, even if you don't feel like this immediately is going to apply. Be open-minded.
Yeah, because this could be showing up even mildly.
Sure.
And even that could be moved to a healthier place. This is going to improve all your relationships.
So why don't you go ahead and read her bio?
Okay. Carla Romo is a certified dating and relationship coach, author of the new book, Contagious Love, and nationwide speaker. She helps women who feel stuck and stagnant build purpose and confidence in their breakups, dating life, and relationships. Basically, she's your love life cheerleader, here to watch you win at love and at any stage of your relationship. You can find her at IamCarlaRomo.com and on social at IamCarlaRomo. We will link to those things for you.
We found out that before this episode, before we started recording, that Carla's coach, listen to this, Carla's coach was our friend Amy, who Kristen used to coach. So Carla's like our grandchild.
I know. I felt like her coaching grandmother, which makes me feel kind of old, but also
we're the same age as Carla.
I know.
So
I know.
It's fine.
So what a weird
our coaching lineage.
Synchronous connection.
Yeah, and she also went to IPEC, the Coach Training Institute that we introduced Amy to, and then Amy, I don't know how Carla found IPEC, but anyway, she
so many points of connection that we had no idea about before we actually started talking to her.
No, I was introduced to her through a totally different friend. So it's just funny how
we were meant to have this conversation.
It is a small world, and I do love that. Okay. So we will be back at the end with a little preview of next week. We're going to get into
teaser.
We're going to do an announcement next week. So we'll be back for that. Hey, Carla.
Hey.
Hi, we're so excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here.
Okay. So let's just dive right in because I have too many questions and it's just people want to know. And so, okay, you talk a lot about codependency, or at least I've seen you mention that word, and it delights me because I've been wanting to talk to someone about this for a really long time.
Oh, well, that's perfect. I literally just wrote an entire book on it. So
yes, I know. So, okay. So first, I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, what was your relationship with codependency and the stuff you wrote about in your book? Obviously, it had to be very personal and something you had to work through in order for you to have enough material to write a book about it.
Right.
So I'm very curious about how you ended up where you are right now.
I always say it started in my childhood. So I grew up with domestic violence. So like right there, I didn't feel enough. I didn't feel worthy. And I just lacked self-love. Like I really did. I didn't love myself. And so it manifested in trying to find intimate partners that could fill that for me. Well, it doesn't really work that way, but I thought it did. So I kept going into codependent relationship, toxic relationships, unhealthy relationships, literally since I was in like elementary school. And it's what I talk about in my book, which I know you're probably like, elementary school, that's crazy. Like what? But no, really, like that was my mentality from a very young age. And it wasn't until my early 20s when I was 24 years old and I was in an abusive relationship. And I realized that I was making a choice to be in that relationship. Because for so long, it felt like, well, what's wrong with me? I just keep ending up in these like toxic relationships and same cycle. And I'm taking care of all these people and they don't realize how amazing I am. Because like, here I am, like, I know the answers to their problems and they're not like latching on to that and they're not fixing themselves. And I went into that cycle just like over and over again. It's like insanity doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And it wasn't until I realized that it was a choice and I could either continue to choose partners that were unhealthy and continue to self-sabotage, or I could step into the relationship with myself and create that relationship of the foundation of self-love, self-worth, feeling like I was enough, knowing that I was enough, and then being able to carry that on to have healthy relationships. So I ended that relationship when I was 24 years old, and I stepped into the most important relationship that I've ever had and I will always ever have, which was the relationship with myself. And then from there, I learned how to have that relationship and then how to bring that to intimate relationships and how to pick healthy partners, how to create boundaries, what red flags are, how to communicate. I mean, list goes on and on. And ever since then, that's what I've been doing in intimate relationships.
Yeah, it's almost like you were your first client long ago.
Right? Yeah.
Well, this is leading me to, and I'm sure our listeners have their own idea of this, and I'm sure there is an official definition, but I'm curious of your definition of codependency. What does that look like, and how do you recognize when one of your clients or when you yourself are in a codependent relationship?
That is such a good question because there is no official definition of codependency. And as I would say, people couldn't get their shit together to come up with an official definition. So there's about 1 million definitions that are all very similar, but there's no one official definition. So long story short, the way that I explain it is you are yourself and you're with somebody else. And this actually can be a friend. This can be a family member. This can be an intimate partner, a coworker, whatever, any kind of relationship really. To the point where you lose a sense of yourself because you're so focused on the other person's needs that you neglect your own self-care, your own worth, your own love, and that you pour everything into this other person's cup and you leave yourself with nothing. So ultimately, you have this like imbalance of trying to take care and fix and work on other people who maybe struggle with personality disorder like narcissism or mental health issues like severe depression who aren't doing anything about it, or an addict who isn't, participating in a 12-step program or, a spiritual program of their own in sobriety. And you're trying to fix and help this person, but you neglect yourself. So it's losing a sense of self in a relationship with someone else.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's it. Like, I love that. I didn't know there wasn't an official definition of codependency. I'm like, why hasn't no one fixed that?
Well, I didn't know it either until I was doing research for the book. And they say that up to 90% of us are codependent, which is also a crazy thing. And of course, that's a spectrum as well. So, right. For example, it's like I have clients who come and see me who literally have been in like abusive relationships with addicts and are at this breaking point of like, oh my gosh, like I can't take this anymore. Like, I don't even know what self-care, boundaries, any of that looks like. Do I have clients who are dating, have been in some unhealthy relationships, aren't very great with creating self-care, but are able to at least have like a functioning relationship. So I'd say that it's a big spectrum of codependency and what that looks like.
Yeah.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Well, and it makes sense too, then why that relationship with yourself is so crucial, because the codependency is absolutely stemming from your inability to prioritize yourself or even make yourself as valuable as another human being.
100%. Yeah, completely.
So before we get into I want to get into, okay, how do you step away from and actually become someone who's not codependent? I want to get a little bit more into the weeds of codependency and and even if someone doesn't want to identify as codependent, maybe they're not, maybe they don't like the idea of identifying that way, but just like unhealthy relationship patterns. So like what you were saying earlier just brought up some questions for me and maybe some assumptions that you can either confirm or deny. Okay.
I'm here.
So when you said, I grew up in a home with domestic violence, I ended up in an abusive relationship. To me, I was like, check. Like, it is astounding how often people who grew up with an addict end up in a relationship with an addict, or they grew up being abused, they end up with an abuser. Yep. So why? Like in your perspective, why does that happen so frequently?
I think it's really what you're used to seeing and what's comfortable. I mean, I used to be comfortable in chaos. When I first broke away from chaos, and I'm talking about like unhealthy relationships, unhealthy relationship patterns, all of those things. When I broke away from the chaos, it was very uncomfortable because I kept thinking like, when's the next shoe going to drop? This is too good to be true. Like this isn't normal just to have like complete nothing going on in my life. Right. And so for myself, that's really why I was attracted to a certain type, because there was something about the chaos and drama that actually felt calming, that felt okay.
Yeah. There's that familiar factor.
Yeah, it was familiar. And I think as well as there's certain characteristics, especially from the codependent side of things, if you're trying to fix someone, like it's almost like a love addiction in a sense. Like you are trying to fix people who you see potential in, who are addicts or, like I said, mental health issues, whatever, that aren't taking care of themselves. It becomes it's like a magnet. You're a magnet for them, like to them. It's like you're just like, oh my gosh, like okay, like you've got issues, like I can help you out, and it's just this mentality that fits perfectly together of somebody who's not taking care of themselves and somebody who wants to help fix someone else. That I think is how the attraction happens over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just makes sense. Wow, that's hard. Well, I'm imagining there are some people who are trying to determine, especially since 90% of people are somewhere on that scale of codependent relationships, trying to determine, am I on that spectrum? And if so, where am I on that spectrum? So I wonder, and this might be evident in some of the work you do with your clients, what are some of the side effects of being in a codependent relationship? Like, what are some of the things that you might be noticing within yourself, within other areas of your life, the things that are affected by this?
Yeah. It's funny. I just got off a client call right before we did this recording. And in the call, my client was talking about people pleasing. Like she can't say no to people. Mm-hmm. And that she feels this like need to really show up and be that like friend, like even just like in friendships, like just show up and be that like best friend, but that other people aren't doing it for her, like aren't reciprocating it in friendships. And she goes above and beyond. And so it's this idea and these needs of like needing to people please, not being able to say no, which are symptoms of not having any boundaries, not putting your own self-care and needs first. So I've had a client before who was dating somebody who maybe had addiction issues and as a result was taking care of their finances. But she wasn't necessarily handling hers first. She was so focused on helping him get through it that she wasn't focusing on her own. And that is a symptom of lack of self-care. And a lot of people don't look at self-care as finances, but I think it's a huge thing when it comes to self-care. And then there's other things around self-love, like choosing partners that are there to like fill your cup up first before you fill your own cup. And nobody can do that for you. Like nobody can fill up your cup before you can fill up your own. And picking partners that aren't ever going to be able to do that and having that intention is a symptom of lack of self-love. So there's all these different symptoms and ways that people who are codependent, attract and go after, and that comes out and manifests in the relationship, that might just be seen as like little things as they go. But when you really turn around and look back at the bigger picture, like the lack of self-care, the lack of boundaries, the lack of self-love, then you see, okay, that's really what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's this thing where a lot of people who would qualify as codependents are going like 80% of the way to someone, and they're not letting the other person come like halfway, and they're not meeting the other person halfway, right?
Yeah, there's this inherent imbalance of effort.
Yes, which is why it also works great, because you have somebody who is like a narcissist and you have somebody who's attracted to that, and immediately they suck up. I mean, it's the perfect mix. It's like they suck up so much of that person because that person's so willing to give so much that they're not willing to give back. And it's just being emotionally unavailable that makes it like a perfect disaster.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, because if someone is willing to give their healthy 50% and someone else is only willing to give their 20%, that's not going to be a match. Or if someone's coming so far over, that's also not going to be a match. So the people who are, I don't know, I'm thinking of attachment styles because we just talked about this in a previous podcast. I don't know how familiar you are with those attachment styles, but the people who are healthily attached, they don't tend to attract the anxious attached or the avoiding attached as often because it's just not a match.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Because what would they be getting out of it if they were, attracting somebody who's healthy and wanting somebody who's healthy? Like they wouldn't get that much out of being with somebody who's an addict or has mental illness that they're not treating or taking care of.
Mm-hmm. So let's do a little bit of a visual here, because I would love for you to take us through, let's say someone is out there and they're dating, and I kind of want you to walk me through what are some of the very first red flags or problem areas that you see with people who fall into these patterns over and over again, from the beginning. Where are things kind of going sideways, and what are the signs and the red flags?
All right. So this is the first sign if you're out to dinner or even just grabbing coffee with a date and they're not polite to the wait staff.
Oh, well, sure.
That's just a subtle red flag right there. But then when you start to look even deeper into it, it's making plans really quickly. So somebody seems to you are with them for a month and you've been just dating them. They're like, maybe we should move in together. Wouldn't that make sense?
Yeah. Yikes.
Things like that. And you're like, that doesn't really make sense. And then other things as well, if you're dating somebody and you're like, hey, let's meet at this time. And they just kind of tend to show up whenever, or don't ever get their act together to show up on time usually. And I'm not talking 10, 15 minutes late. I'm talking shows up an hour later. That's suspicious. That's strange, And the other thing too is in the beginning, and I actually talk about this in my book, is I call it the symptom to the bigger problem. For example, finances. So if somebody is not able to pay for dates, you could just be thinking, okay, cool. That's fine. We'll just keep splitting it kind of thing, whatever, or, I'll take the bill. But then later on down the road, you find out, oh, they're not even making their rent. It's that symptom you see on the date. Okay. It has to do with money. It seems a little off and weird, but whatever, it's fine. Then all of a sudden down the road, you realize, oh, this is a bigger issue. And this is why I always say, don't paint red flags green, because ultimately, that flag is going to become so huge and neon red, no matter how much you try to bury it, paint it green, whatever, that it will absolutely 110% come out later on in the relationship. So it's important to follow these red flags early on and use your damn gut. That is always what I say. Your gut is your best red flag detector. Mm-hmm. It really is.
Oh, Carla, I wish I had met you so many years ago in my life, because I was notorious for painting red flags green wanting to see the best in people. And again, it's not always the worst quality to have, but it can be taken too far and it can make it so that you don't see what's real. And so if you're not actually looking at the person in front of you, you're looking at the person that you wish were in front of you, then it's really easy to fall into those codependent traps.
Definitely. And I always say it's being in denial, like you're not in acceptance of reality. And so one of my favorite quotes is fall in love with reality, because ultimately that's really all you have. And it's this fantasy that you've fallen in love with. It's maybe a security blanket you fell in love with, of this idea and expectation you had for yourself and this person, but you're really not doing you any good by following that fantasy out and not really seeing what these red flags are about.
No, it never turns out very well. I know from experience.
No, it doesn't. Me too.
So, okay, to sum up some of the things you just said about like at the beginning. Okay. Well, hold on, because you gave us some really great things. Like when you're on a date, if they're being rude to people, like don't try to explain that away. Like that is a really good sign for how they treat people. If it's moving way too fast, that's an indication that something, I really think that's a good one, because I think that I think that the love addiction thing is very, like, is so real. And especially at the beginning, what people, if someone is a love addict, usually what they're high on is like those hormones that happen at the very beginning in that sort of whirlwind phase. So if it's going fast, it's like, why is someone so amped? Like, why are they so amped up on those hormones and that oxytocin or whatever, you know?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So are there signs before you've even met someone? Like when you're just like in an app chatting with someone, or do you know what I'm like, even before you've actually physically met them, are there things that you tell your clients to look out for, or like best practices? I'm just curious about, since so much of dating like happens virtually, I'm curious about that part.
So there's an aspect around safety, I think, especially with the apps, and like making sure that you feel safe. That's the idea. And the way that you establish trust with a date or your future partner or whatever is also ensuring that you feel safe and making sure that, you know, you're in a position that you feel good and comfortable showing up to. So I actually always say that when my clients are dating online or apps or whatever it is, to really suss out the person before you jump to like, let's go on a date immediately. If their profile looks a little strange or doesn't really include much about them, do you really want to be going on a date with somebody who doesn't really care to put that much about them in their profile? And I'm not asking for like paragraphs or stories, but I'm talking about the ones that are like, I am 36, looking for something serious, period. Like, to me, that doesn't seem like somebody who's really looking for someone serious, that just kind of gives their age and a sentence, right?
Right.
The other thing too is where you want to meet them, I think tells a lot. And that can set the tone for the date. If somebody's looking to immediately meet that day and like right away and is like eager to do it, I would say that's a red flag.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. They're not saying, hey, I have a life outside of this and I need to work you around it. It's like, no, this is my number one thing. I need to make sure that this person I don't know and I don't have any connection to is priority.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing too, I would say, is meeting in a place that's like a public location. So I would say if you're meeting somebody on a dating app, you really don't need to do a nice dinner. And you don't need to like go on an extravagant date or anything like that. Like you just need to meet in a public place, like go for coffee. I always think coffee or go for ice cream is an easy, fun first date through a dating app, because then you're in a public spot, you have an out. And I actually was coaching one of my guy clients last week about that. And he's very much so about like, he feels a lot of pressure to like have these dates, meet somebody online, and then like, you know, show up and come up with a plan and everything. And I said, well, where are you taking care of yourself? Like, where's your out in all of this? Because I said, I'm telling you right now, women have outs. Like, like, as women, we have an out. Okay, well, in our heads, like, okay, well, if it's not that great, I can always just say, hey, I have to go home for this. But he was like planning out all these dates, and I said, like, what's your out and where are you putting yourself first? So I would say that to anybody who's meeting somebody online is like, how are you putting yourself first by meeting up with this person. So don't rearrange plans. And if the person is upset that you can't get together with them for another week, then that's a red flag. Like right there, like, okay, something's off, that they feel this need to like quickly get together, or they can't even wait a week to see you.
Mm-hmm.
So just little things like that, meeting in a public place, not going on this like fancy, extravagant date. All of those little things can kind of tip you in directions of red flags and what's healthy and what's not.
I have a lot of friends right now who are, I mean, obviously, like, I'm 31. Most of my friends are around the same age who are dating. And multiple of them have said that they like the idea and they wish that they had been doing it more, that they insert like a phone conversation before they have a date with someone. Like, and it seems kind of old fashioned because it doesn't seem like the millennial, or particularly probably not the Gen Z way.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like, oh my God, this is so much easier than going out on a date and realizing wish I hadn't even said yes to this. Like, this is such a waste of time.
Screening tool.
Yeah. Like, I need a screening call. And how do you feel about inserting a screening call into the process?
Yeah, I've actually suggested that to clients and it works great. Because ultimately you can just say, hey, can we get on the phone for just like a quick, like 10 minutes, like, talk to each other, just feel each other out, see how it goes. And then if you're not interested, then you don't waste your time. Like you said, like you don't show up somewhere and like immediately you're like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? Oh, like, is the hour over yet? And can I finish my coffee any faster? Get me out of here. Like those feelings. Mm-hmm. But I would also say there is something to meeting somebody in person as well. So if you aren't for the phone call and you do want to meet somebody in person, I say go for it. I think both ways are effective. And it just depends on how you want to prioritize your dating and what that looks like for you and what your values are around that as well.
Right.
Well, I feel like if it's good enough for employers who are much more often now doing that phone screening first, then why not use that if that feels like a good approach for you? And like you said, it's harder to determine your compatibility when there's not that in-person factor, but you might be able to tell some of those red flags right off the bat. And that might make you say, okay, this is not worth meeting in person versus I'm not sure, but there were no really severe red flags right off the bat. So maybe that is worth a coffee.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Definitely.
Okay. Wow. I just feel like there are a million questions that I haven't asked that I really want to ask, but I do want to transition to like, okay, how do people if you're starting to recognize I don't have great boundaries, I do keep attracting the same people. I'm going to throw in, I keep attracting people that remind me of my parents or like baggage from my childhood that I'm trying to sort out. And through romantic relationships with other people, like I keep going 80% of the way and getting people who I feel like I have to like work to get them to want to be with me, or I keep attracting people who are super over eager and it's kind of freaking me out. Uh-huh. So all of that leads to, I have to develop a better relationship with myself. If I ever expect to have a better, healthy, secure, and I mean that in the securely attached kind of way, relationship with another person, I have to have a healthy, securely attached relationship with myself. So, I mean, that's a huge question. And obviously as a coach, like we all know that's something we spend months working on with a person. Mm-hmm. But what are the first steps for like developing that kind of solidity within yourself?
Yeah. And first and foremost, like the most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself. Like that's it. Like it doesn't matter. Yes, you could say, I've actually had somebody say, well, my kid is more important than like the relationship with myself. But I push back and say, well, actually, yes, the relationship's important, but if you're not taking care of yourself, how do you show up for your kid? So it's even taking it further with, intimate relationships. And if you're not focusing on you and establishing, like you had said earlier, like boundaries and self-care and all of that kind of stuff, then how do you expect to show up for anyone else, let alone yourself? Mm-hmm. And I would say that self-love is a journey. There is no destination with self-love. And I think that especially nowadays, it's so over-marketed as like hashtags, like self-love,
right.
Self-care. Right. And ultimately, self-love is sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And it's building that relationship and recognizing it's progress, not perfection. And really focusing on what do I need to do for myself today? And not looking at like the designer self-love and self-care, which I think is great. And it is a form, like you can go get a massage and things like that. But what am I doing to get 8 hours of sleep? Did I eat all 3 meals today? Am I saying no to people and making time for myself? Am I scheduling out time to meditate or go for a walk? How is my, fitness exercise schedule? And I'm not saying you have to go do a whole CrossFit thing, but going for a walk just to get outside and, be healthy in that sense. That is a great way to start really establishing that relationship within. A lot of times when I have clients come to me, they have no sense of self-care routine at all. And a lot of times I just go over their entire schedule. Well, what's your day-to-day schedule like? Well, no wonder you keep getting upset in your marriage and having these arguments because you're not getting sleep. Like you're tired. And there's something called HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And it's like, if you're hitting one of those, like, yeah, like no wonder you're not getting enough sleep and you didn't eat breakfast. Okay. So like, yeah, you're going to be grumpy. You're not going to be able to think straight. And being able to take care of yourself and love yourself looks like showing up for yourself on a daily basis and being able to take it a day at a time and evaluating your schedule and rearranging things so that you can feel okay and you can function, as your best self for that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, like being a good parent to yourself.
It's exactly like that.
Yes, exactly.
Well, it has to start there. I think like people want to jump to the more self-actualized, version of self-care and self-love. But if you are not fundamentally interested in taking care of yourself the way a good parent would take care of you, and honestly, a lot of you need to be reparenting yourself because you didn't get parented well the first time around, which is why you keep ending up with like the same old loser over and over again. Like, it's a good practice to go back and actually have to fundamentally parent yourself on that level so that you prove you are worthy of like consistent care and consistent intention and consistent, like getting your needs met consistently. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's not sexy. It doesn't sound like super interesting, but it's critical to start there.
Exactly. And that's the first step. And then from there, you can add in tools. Like I love affirmations. They're the best. I have them in my book. At the end of each chapter, there's an affirmation. And being able to practice affirmations of an I am statement and then creating that in your schedule. So maybe it's putting an affirmation of like, I am enough, and then putting it on the mirror that you do your makeup on, like makeup in the morning. Or maybe it's scheduling out emails to yourself, like scheduled emails throughout the week that say just I am enough. And it's a reminder, like when you see it, it's like, oh yeah, I am enough, and getting that dose of that affirmation. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's even a great way just to add on to that. Once you have that the basic skills of taking care of yourself, parenting yourself, essentially.
Mm-hmm. I'm especially glad that the way you've been talking about this, it's very clear that it's a process and that it's not an overnight thing, because just like you were describing, it's not healthy to try to push a relationship with someone else too quickly. You have to slowly develop that new way of relating to yourself, because otherwise you're not going to really believe that you can trust yourself to keep it going, to stay sustainable.
Exactly. And that's even like what I tell my clients is when they start to dip their toe in the water, is what I call it, of practicing self-love and self-care and showing up for themselves and learning what self-respect looks like for the first time, that it is a process. And it's like starting to date. It's like going from never having a relationship to being in a relationship. You're like, what is this? This is so uncomfortable. This is weird. Like, am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Oh, I think I just failed. Like all of those emotions that you feel when you're dating also happen when you're creating that relationship within.
That's a really good point. And I bet, so a lot of my friends who are dating, I think that their approach to both self-care and to like dating has been incremental in such a healthy way. And I think that the whole wanting to jump to like, I'm perfectly healed and I'm like dating exactly the right person now is aspirational, but it's not necessarily realistic. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of sounds like hey, maybe it's okay if, like you're not perfect at meeting your own needs, but you're working on it and you're trying. And also it would maybe be okay if you go out on a date with someone and they're not great, but they're better than the last person you went out on a date with. Like there's value in learning from the process as opposed to trying to be perfect and trying to like wait until you're perfect to sort of engage with life is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, 100%. And it's about enjoying the journey and not the destination. Because yes, you could be single and you could think, well, I'm not going to feel lonely and I'll feel much better and happier once I'm in that relationship. But I look at that as a quick fix. And you can feel lonely. You are a human being. You have emotions. You can still be in a relationship and feel lonely. It can even be a healthy relationship and you still feel lonely because you're imbalanced on filling yourself with some self-love and self-care. And if you aren't enjoying the journey that it's taking to get there, then you probably are not going to enjoy the destination because it's about finding the happiness now. It's about finding serenity, peace, whatever you want to call it, the contentment in life now while you're making steps and strides to get to where you want to be. That makes the huge difference.
Well, and part of that is being able to, like Rachel said, appreciate the progress. So in order to be able to be content with where you are now and recognizing, okay, like I may not have figured this all out and maybe I'll never figure it all out. Like maybe there's just no cap in terms of, self-love or healthy relationships, but I can clearly see that things are improving and I'm feeling a little bit better, even though I have slip-ups, and, being able to mark that progress and give yourself credit for it, even if you're not 100% where you think you should be.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
One of the hardest truths that I feel like I have had to come to terms with, and that a lot of people, pretty much everyone who would pick up your book, a lot of people listening to this, almost everyone, I imagine, has to come to. And this is not just about relationships. This is about, Kristen and I talk about this all the time in the context of your career, but there is not a thing, a career, a relationship that is going to fix how you feel. Like once you get that relationship, then I will be happy. Once I get that new job, then I will be happy. Like that is kind of what codependence is. It's believing that something outside of you can fill the void that you feel is missing. And honestly, like in extreme level, that's what addiction turns into, is trying to fill a void with something outside of you or trying to escape into something outside of you because being with yourself is like untenable.
Yep.
And so truly the work is, I have to be okay with being by myself, or have to be okay with the fact that I don't have the perfect job yet. It doesn't mean I'm not allowed to be lonely. It doesn't mean I'm not allowed to be sad about that. And it means that I can't expect anyone else to come in and fix that for me if I'm not willing to do the work within myself that it requires to be a match to the right person or to the right job.
Exactly. And the people that you're choosing to be, I don't know, either in a marriage with, a relationship, or to date, and that you're making a choice to, because I always say it's choice at the end of the day, even though you're like, how did I get here? I don't understand. That at the end of the day, that's a reflection of where you're at as well.
Yeah.
And the way that you think of yourself.
Yep. Yeah. It's like, if you ever need to know where you're at when it comes to, I tell my clients this all the time, and like, sometimes it's cool to hear, sometimes it's not great to hear, but it's the truth. If you ever need to know how you're doing, look at what you're getting. Like,
right.
What
you're attracting?
Right. What are the results that you are getting? What is the pattern of the people you keep attracting into your life, or the jobs you keep attracting into your life? And that's pretty much where you're hanging out. And so if you don't like that, great, we can do something about that. Obviously, that's like what coaching is about. That's why you wrote this book.
Right.
But like, you can't continue to bemoan your reality and expect someone else or a job to come in and fix it. You have to be the one who's willing to like, okay, well, if I want to get something different, I have to change something. I have to change the internal software here so that I can like get an upgrade and get some better stuff.
Right. Like if the same thing keeps happening to you, you're the common denominator. So like, okay, there might be some things that like, maybe I can approach this differently and attract a different result.
So your book is called Contagious Love.
Mm-hmm.
Why contagious?
Because codependency is contagious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it's this thing that it's like no matter what relationship you're in, or you pivot to this relationship, pivot to that person, whatever, it's contagious. It just doesn't go away. And it's something that also it's like you give to your partner as well, in the sense that it's a cycle. You're in it with the other person. And it's until you decide to like, okay, I'm breaking free of this, that you'll just continue this pattern. And you have to be able to say like, all right, this is enough. Like I need to do something about it. And that is how you're able to stop this cycle of codependency.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then I imagine once you are approaching it from a healthier way, that's contagious too. The people around you are gonna pick up on that, and that's only going to keep serving you in good ways. So
yes,
I love that title.
Thanks.
Well, I was about to say to continue on that same, analogy. I'm like, and you become sort of inoculated against the stuff that you used to be susceptible to, right? It's like once you do the work, it's like getting a vaccine against a lot of the crap that you used to catch all of the time. Now it's just going to probably bounce right off of you. If you've gotten to a level where like, I'm literally no longer a match to that. Yep. It's nice.
Yes, it is. And you can actually stop. There is a way to stop the pattern and to break free, and you don't have to be in the cycle. And a lot of times it's that awareness and it's the acceptance, I think, is the biggest part of accepting where you're at. And then once you have the acceptance, you have the awareness. And from there, you can start to make differences.
Well, that makes sense because we just talked earlier about the fact that if you're in denial, then you can't even accept the fact that you have a problem.
Right, exactly.
Right. And
which
so
is why I'm so glad that. Yeah, I'm glad that you gave that statistic about such a big part of the population falls on the spectrum in some way, because it's going to make a lot of people step back and say, okay, if 90% of people on average fall into this, then maybe I need to look at myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the last questions I want to ask you is, what is a healthy relationship in your mind?
I like that question. Yeah, a healthy relationship is where both partners are mutually and equally giving to the relationship. And I want to use equal in the sense of equity, because yes, there's times where your partner might be going through something and you got to pick up the slack to help them get there, vice versa. But ultimately the relationship is respectful and you have boundaries and you still have a sense of self. And examples of that would be you're dating somebody, but you're also still getting together with girlfriends on the weekend.
Yeah.
And you're still close with your family if that's what you're close to. And you're showing up for work on time. The relationship isn't disturbing anything to keep you functioning in your life. You're still going about your same goals, your schedule, you're prioritizing your needs, but you're also incorporating this other person into your life and figuring out together how you guys want to move forward and grow together.
Can I add a couple things to that?
Absolutely, please.
Okay. Because I mean, obviously Kristen and I are technically career coaches, but we obviously coach people about everything, because once you come in the door, it's like, hello, we're going to talk to you about whatever is eating at you, not just your job. That's the thing it says we do. That's not actually what we're doing most of the time. But between that and a lot of my friends who I have these conversations with, I feel like the deepest sort of common denominator that I've been able to discern in someone who is a potentially really healthy partner for you is someone who is willing to do their own work.
Yes.
Like,
oh my God, I'm so glad you just said that.
Yeah, like they're emotionally astute. They are emotionally literate. They're emotionally available. And here's the thing, just because someone has gone to therapy does not mean they're emotionally available, right? There are people who are really good at talking about their problems, but haven't done a thing to actually work through them or who are stuck in the same pattern, even though they want to break free of it, they can't. So someone who has demonstrated an ability to evolve and to question their own patterns, and who's not only articulate about those patterns, but has actually moved on from some of their challenges and is doing the work. They're not expecting you to do their own emotional labor for them.
Yeah.
To me, that is so critical, because that's where I think a lot of codependency happens, is when you've got one person who's not willing to do any of the emotional work, maybe physical work too.
Right.
And the other person is trying to do double time. Like,
and I would even say that that's summing it up to be emotionally available.
Yeah.
Because they're able to emotionally, like, you know, get their shit together, do their thing, and also be able to show up to the relationship without the expectation that this person needs to help them in some way.
Right. And not just talking the talk, but really backing it up and saying, I have a history of growth, of change, of evolution, and I can demonstrate that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another way I would say that is they take responsibility for their crap. Like, they're not foisting it on you. They're not getting triggered and then going, it's your fault. They're going, I'm getting triggered. I wonder why.
Yep.
Like, they're doing their own inquiry, and they are introspective and not foisting, you know, the brunt of their work onto other people. And if you're with someone like that, that has a really, really high chance of being a great relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that I just love all the points you brought up, because ultimately it's all about taking care of yourself, no matter who it is, whether it's your partner or yourself. Everybody's doing their part to bring together a healthy relationship.
Yeah, it's all about that balance. And it may not look like we're doing the exact same things, but we're contributing equal parts to this relationship in a way that feels balanced to both of us. Nobody's going 80% and the other person's only going 20. We're meeting in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
And this is true. Not just, I want to just bring it full circle and remind people that's true of every relationship, not just romantic relationships.
Oh yeah. Codependency can show up in any relationship in your life.
Right.
Well, it's funny you say that, because in the book I talk about, in my previous career before I became like a coach, author, and speaker, I was a TV producer. And my relationship, was horrible with TV. And it wasn't the person in it, it was the career. And you guys know this because you do career coaching, but in the sense that it was the relationship with the job. It wasn't one job, because I freelanced, I would work on different TV shows. But if I wasn't taking care of myself, then of course I was going to have codependency in my career, and I was going to have it in my intimate relationships.
Yep. I can't tell you how many times I have been able to like track, and almost like it's a copy paste situation between someone's deep like childhood attachment pattern and the way they show up at work. Like, it's amazing. It's like I spent my whole life trying to impress my mom and feeling like I had to prove to her that I was worthy. And, I'm just doing that with my female boss, like 100% of the time. I'm like, yeah, because if you don't heal that, you're just going to carry that right on with you. And so, yes, guys, like I want you to think about the fact that if you have any touch of codependence in one place, it's just probably showing up everywhere. It just might be more obvious in one area, but it is worth looking into all of them and like being on the lookout for all of the red flags in your life.
Well, one of the mantras of the coach training school that we all three graduated from is how you do anything is how you do everything. And that is so applicable to codependency among everything else in the world. But yeah, it's going to show up with people and with things and with situations and with careers. It's just, it's contagious, like you said.
Yes.
Okay. Carla, this has been so awesome. I just wish that we could talk to you for 3 more hours, but whatever. You have a book. People need to we can't give it all away. They need to go read your book. So tell them a little bit more about like where they can find you, your book, all of that.
So you can find me at I am Carla Romo. That is my Instagram. It's my Facebook. My website is iamcarlaromo.com. If you want to order the book, you can get a copy off of my website at iamcarlaromo.com. Click my book. Contagious Love will be right there. You can get a copy. If you aren't sure, you're like, I'm not sure about this girl, you can actually download chapter 1 from my website and have a little preview of it.
Generous of you.
Before you decide like, hey, you know what? I'm all in. But yeah, and it's I am Carla with a C, Romo, like Tony Romo. And I'm not really sure if we're related if you're thinking that, because I get asked that everywhere. But
you should just say yes.
Yeah, I do sometimes. I've had fun with it. I'm not going to lie, but it depends. But literally everywhere, from doctors to banks to like airlines.
They're all asking.
Yeah, they're all asking. So I
That's
just
hilarious.
answer it for you.
Okay, well, we will link to all of that in the show notes so people can go find that, though that is very easy and they should not get lost if they want to go check you out in your book. And I hope they do. I really want to read it. I wish I'd been able to like read it before we interviewed you, but that was like very aspirational. But I'm also just in awe of anyone who has actually just sat down and written a book, because it's something that people keep telling Kristen and I that we need to do. And I'm like, I know, but we still haven't done it.
Yeah.
I know. It's no joke. It's a real commitment. So
it's huge.
Huge kudos to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So thank you so much. I feel like we might need to have you on it again in the future at some point to get into like, I don't know, deeper conversations around dating and relationships, because this stuff just has like it has roots on roots, and it's so broad.
It really is. And that's honestly like why I specifically chose to focus right now on codependency. I'm thinking maybe communication might be my next like topic focus.
Yes, please.
Oh my gosh.
Like, doing a whole book around communicating. But yeah, no, I appreciate this. This was awesome. You guys are awesome.
So we will be back on Tuesday. We're gonna not gonna do a blog. We're gonna do an announcement episode. We're gonna announce 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
One is, I don't even know how.
It's just an update on us.
Don't act like we're gonna like drop any bombs. This isn't bomb dropping, though. It is interesting.
It's intriguing.
It's kind of like
it's a twist in the story.
It's a little bit like a pivot. Like, you did what now?
I feel the same way, even though I'm in it.
I do feel that way. Yeah. If you were listening a few episodes ago when we were like, we're fine, everything's fine, we're not dying or anything.
We're not super overwhelmed.
It's fine. We're going to tell you why we feel like that. So we will be back on Tuesday with...
Well, and we're also going to announce something else that is Clarity on Fire related. That
is for you.
For you guys. Yeah.
Yes.
One is just interesting information about us. One is for you.
Some for everybody.
Yeah. So come on back on Tuesday and we'll give you the latest gossip in Clarity on Fire land.
Okay, goodbye.